Hello everyone, I'm Iron Phoenix and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Steam and Greenlight and a couple of the games that have been abusing the system. So let's talk for a moment about Earth Year 2066. Now this was a game that was built in the Unity engine, and here I am in the Unity engine, and it was meant to be some kind of first-person survival game, but for a year nothing had gone on with it. It was on Indiegogo, like a sort of pre-release demo type thing, and then exactly the same build popped up on Steam, and there were a few updates to it that apparently added cursors and then improved the cursors, but the whole thing just reeked of a game that had been designed to take people's money on a promise. Because that's what early access is. The developers are saying, here's what we've got, but the game will get better. And Greenlight at the moment is nothing but a promise. It's, here's our game, if you vote for us and we get on Steam, we're going to work on this game. There doesn't have to be a demo for Greenlight even, so people can just say, yeah, here's our game, this is what we want to make, not this is what we are making. And that is obviously causing problems. And the other side of it is that Valve are not doing much quality control. So games like Earth Year 2066 can stay on Steam Greenlight, early access, and take people's money, and nothing is done about it until the pressure finally gets so much that Valve finally cave. And that is obviously causing problems for everyone, because there are a lot of good games on early access. We've got Planetary Annihilation, which is updated very regularly. We've got Space Engineers, made by the same guys who did Minor Wars, which wasn't a particularly good game, but Space Engineers is updated usually once a week with new features, optimizations, and even the build in its alpha state is very good. We've got Prison Architect, made by Introversion, who have a history of making great, unique games. We have Kerbal Space Program, made by a group of Mexicans, and it is still in alpha, I believe, but it's constantly getting more and more updates, and it's getting more and more expansive. And they're increasing the price as more content is added, which is fair. But there are developers out there who are putting things on Greenlight, getting it through Greenlight, putting it onto Steam in early access, and then just taking people's money and not actually working on the game. And that's a terrible thing to do, because you are just poisoning the well. You're not making people want to invest. So one of Muxwell's updates was adding a cursor. Let me show you that. So this is Frozen Skies in a very, very early state, and got a very small amount of scripting involved here. So Central HUD, I'll just open this up. So there you go. So we've got a cursor here. The cursor isn't locked, but we do have a reticle that's in the centre of the screen, along with information, time value and damage value. Okay, so for that reticle in the centre of the screen, so first we declare our variable. This is before anything, this is before start, this is before updates, before GUI. So we announce our variable, we name it, so that's reticle, and then we tell the program what it is. So this is a string. And then to actually display it on the graphical interface, we then go to central area, and we've got it here. So it's in an area in the center of the screen. So got begin area, and that declares what the area is. And then down here in the center, GUI layout.label reticle, and then we close the area off. That's all that's involved to make a reticle. So that shouldn't need an entire update to add that, because that is literally 2 lines of code. 4 if you add in the fact that you're using layouts and ending the doing begin area and end area. So where do the problems lie? Well, they lie in 2 courts really, but they ultimately, I think it hinges on Valve, because people are going to do this sort of stuff because Valve are letting them do it. Valve needs far more quality control, and they need to act much sooner to nail games which are not that are not well, any kind of quality, that are not being updated, that are not interacting with the community in a sensible manner, that are not telling people what's going on, telling them what's going to be in the next patch, just keeping them up to date, because at the end of the day you do not need regular updates. You can have a few updates here and a few updates there, but they have to keep coming, and you have to say, you know, when they're coming. So as an example, I currently have a health system in the game, and the health system, we've got health up here, and down here you'll see function apply damage, damage int, and that basically takes the damage value, which is an integer, and subtracts it from the health, which is also an integer. So for example, I could have a fire, and you could walk into that fire, and that fire would tell the HUD, it would tell the camera and tell the HUD, I want you to apply damage 5, and that's an integer, and so it would do 5 minus equals health, so it would take 5 off the health value. And yeah, so you would suffer 5 health from walking into the fire. But you could even go further than that. You could even tell the player what they're walking into. So you could have a graphic on the side saying, you know, with a fire symbol. So you know that would be an update, and I could say, well, that update is going to take me a couple of days to implement and test before I ship that out. But I may not necessarily want to just do that. I might want to actually start on, for example, an AI system. So in that week, so I'm going, in a week's time, I'm going to release an update, and it's going to have the fire system in place and the start of an AI system. So there might be some robots that are patrolling around, and then you can attack them. But the AI system isn't in place yet, so it might take, for example, a month to implement and test the AI so that it is working as it should. And even then there will be bugs. So you could say that, you know, in a week's time I'm going to release this, in a month's time I'm going to aim towards doing this, but there's going to be, might be some other updates as we go. And that's fine, because you are telling the community what's going on and when it's going to happen. Obviously there are things that can stall development. Creative blocks are horrible, and anybody who has never had any kind of creative block, you do not know how horrible that is. To want to do something but not being able to actually find the energy to do it. And it is an absolute nightmare. I know that happened to the developer of Towns, which has now been passed over to a different developer. His wife got cancer, diagnosed with cancer, and so he had to deal with that. When he came back, he just didn't feel like doing anything to the game, and so the game suffered as a result, and a lot of people didn't really understand that. probably because they've never had a creative block. They don't know how horrible it is to just not want to do anything more to the game. Not because you don't want to do anything to the game, but because you just physically cannot do anything. It is really horrible, and you just need to wait for it. Either wait for it to pass, or have another project that you work on the side. You just kind of need, your mind just basically needs to recover from that till you can get back to actually focusing on what you need to do. So yeah, I don't really know if there is an answer to this problem. Ultimately, the answer to the problem is that Valve need to sort themselves out. They need to add some kind of quality control. They need to make sure that just as a simple thing, anything that goes through green light should have a demo, so that people can actually see the promise that people are making. But Valve also need to do a certain amount of cutting out the dead wood. A developer who makes a game with the idea that they are just going to release it on early access, collect the profits, and not do anything, that price gate isn't going to help much, because they will pay their $100 to get onto Greenlight. They will get it through Greenlight, and say they put it on. I think Muxwell put his game on for around $10, something like that. So that only needs 10 people to buy that game for them to have made their money back from Greenlight. And those 10 people are going to be shafted because they've bought into a promise and they're never going to see anything back from that. Steam are offering refunds for people who bought into the Earth year 2066. That's development from today, but quite frankly there is so much rubbish currently on Greenlight and currently getting through Greenlight that it's just getting ridiculous. So one that I saw today was something called Air Control. Now if you haven't seen it, I will drop the link to another video in the description and you can check it out. Essentially it portrays itself as the most realistic air simulator ever, and along with that you basically have figures that look like they've been pulled out of Skyrim, random teleportation, massive amounts of clipping. Games that have been, it just looks like a game that has been designed for YouTube, so YouTubers will buy into it and play it and say, look how terrible this game is. But that's actually not a very good thing, because you are paying money for that game, so you are giving the developers money so that you can go on YouTube and say, look how terrible this game is. So they are making their money back and then some, based off them releasing it on Steam as a terrible game. And this is only going to keep going really until Valve sort themselves out. Valve need to be a lot harder on Greenlight and on early access, and on the games that they release. They need to sort out their front page so it's actually displaying new games, and it's displaying old games that have been released on Steam recently, and it needs to actually display when they were released, not when they were released on Steam. There have been games that have been released on Steam that were released in 2001, and they're saying, oh, this game was released in 2014. And it's quite obvious from the screenshots that it wasn't, but you know, there you go. What can you do? Until Valve sort themselves out, they need to get this under control, because it is damaging everyone. Above all, it is damaging the people who are putting their stuff onto Greenlight and putting their stuff onto Early Access, and people do not want to get burned again. They do not want to spend their money on a promise. So, really, the ball is in Valve's court. They have to do something about this, because it is so damaging for the industry. So, there's been my thoughts on Steam and games development and the terrible games out there.